Ritchie Clapson is with us from PropertyCEO. Good to see you, Ritchie.
Hello there.
Just to give us an overview, for those who don't know, perish the thought, those who don't know about PropertyCEO, tell us more.
Yeah, maybe there is some. Almost certainly there is. PropertyCEO has been around a while, and actually before PropertyCEO, it was me doing training privately.
Yep.
So I've been in this industry over 40 years. I'm a chartered structural engineer, and my retirement gig, which is what this is, because I retired 15 years ago, 16 years ago, maybe 17 years ago now, is actually training property developers.
Yep.
And PropertyCEO, that's what it does. It fundamentally trains anyone, whether they're in property, maybe landlords, people with portfolios, or nothing to do with property, maybe business people, people employed, train them to be property developers if that's what they want to do.
So it's meant to be a retirement gig, it's now a full-time job.
Well, do you know it is? In a way it is. I make sure it's not full-time, but it can be quite full-on. But if it's what you want to do, I often think, people talk about retirement, and I retired, and I wonder what to do with my time, because I was sat there and I bought some cars, I bought a big house and thought, well, what do I do? You get bored.
Yeah.
And so you want to do something. And I always think, if you love what you do, it's not really working, is it? So, I do work probably a lot. A lot of people say, well, why'd you do it? But is this work? Training students, does that work?
It's not digging holes, is it?
It's not digging holes.
Which is a good point. Although we need people to dig holes to build houses, of course.
I guess so, yeah.
There is that. Give us your overview then about property development 2026. We know the whole world of property, whether it's about lettings, landlord, development, in any aspect, has been really under the spotlight for the last few years. What's 2026 looking like?
I think if I think of 2026 purely in development terms, I think it's big. And I think that's because there's, a lot of people talk about buy-to-let, what's happening in buy-to-let, what's going on. And well, it's changing. It is changing. And in some ways, no big surprises. For me, we remember the days when buy-to-lets were long-term investment strategy, and they can still work extremely well for that. But of course, all of that change that is going on, and there's a lot of people who aren't professional landlords who are struggling with the renters' rights and everything, trying to get into HMOs or service apartments, and those areas can be saturated, which I think then makes people think, well, what do I do? What do I do in property? Because I know property, and I know property makes money. And generally people, know that and understand that. So there's a natural progression or a thought process that goes into property development. And I think that basis, 2026, is probably going to be, we certainly saw it from 24 into 25, and I'm certainly starting to see the interest peaking as we go into 26. I can see a big interest in property development. In terms of the marketplace for it, it's still there, and I want to say it's still there because it's not suddenly being generated, because we all know we're supposed to, this government build 300,000 homes a year. We don't build anywhere near that. So every year that's getting compounded up. So the exit route, the marketplace to sell homes, whether that's houses or flats, is huge demand. And so 2026, I think the demand's always been there. The big thing, I suppose, is people realizing and understanding that if they want to do it as a landlord, they can transition into it. Yeah,
I was going to say, landlords are talking about diversifying quite a lot. That seems to be a key word. In terms of development, I mean, that's a kind of bit of an umbrella title there, isn't it? I mean, what is meant by development in this respect?
Well, development, I suppose development could be anything, and it could be a new hospital down the road, it could be a new hotel, it could be a small flat conversion. When I talk about development, I'll tell you what my description of what I call small-scale development is, because I think that's really important for people transitioning into this. But first of all, with the definition of development, for me, it's changing something from what it was to something else.
Got it.
And that's generally a change of use. So it could be taking a bit of land in and we're going to put a property on it. We're going to build a house or a block of flats. That's development. You've developed the land. It could be taking an old office building and turning that into residential. You've developed the office into residential. So fundamentally for me, it's changing the use from one thing to another thing for an uplift in value, maybe an exit with profit. The focus for me, particularly where the demographic of those that are entering development, is you don't need to do a lot to make a lot of money. And you also don't want to do too much because, of course, there's risk. There is risk in this, always risk. And so for me, I defined, so this is a property CEO definition, a Ritchie Clapson definition, small scale property development, which I classify as 5 to 20 units, 5 to 20 houses or flats, because below 5 is where local builders will play, and they compete with you on price, you won't beat them. Above 20, it's often the place where the regional developers are, and they've got a bit more buying power. That 5 to 20 spot is a real sweet spot. And when we're talking about making 20% profit on the gross development value, even 10 flats at 200,000, 2 million, there's 400,000 profit. So for most people transitioning into it, it's a real sweet spot that will make them enough money.
So you talk about 10 times more profit working 1/10 of the time. Now that's quite provocative, isn't it? Because anyone looks at that and goes, well, I'll have some of that. But that's the kind of area that you've just described. That's what you're talking about.
It is. I mean, is it provocative? I think what it does, it catches people's attention, but for the right reasons. It's thought-provoking, okay? Because, so I've done a number of talks, and a number of talks lined up this year, which is, a lot of people heard of 10x, the concept of 10xing. And I do a lot of talks, which is 10x more, 10x less. And it's basically earn 10 times more money for 1/10 of the time. Now, it's thought-provoking, but it's actually a reality if we think about it, because what we look at, the 10x model, the 10x concept, is if we try to... So I did a talk last year when Rachel from Accounts did her budget back in November, and I did a talk and said, okay, if you earn 50,000 a year, which is more than the average income, and you had to earn an extra £5,000 or save £5,000 because tax has gone up here or there or whatever, you could do it in so many different ways. You, of course, could get a little bit of a side hustle. You could do a bit of eBaying. You could, get a cheaper mobile phone, sort out your mortgage. So many different ways. But if I said to you, okay, you earn 50,000 a year, how can you earn 500? And the concept of 10x is there are far less ways to earn 500,000 a year or make 500, which is perhaps more appropriate rather than earn, than there is to make 10% increase or 10% cut.
Gotcha.
And in lots of ways, it's easier because there's only one or two options of how to do it. And when we think about development, I was just talking then about what sort of numbers you could make. So if you did, a scheme where you were making 2.5 million gross development value, that's the sell value, 10 flats at 250,000 or a few flats more, it's still within that 5 to 20 unit. You could be making £500,000 profit. So that is your 10x, 10 times more than what you might make at 50,000. And of course, there's a lot of landlords out there, typical income out of a buy-to-let at the moment, 300,000-400,000 in your pocket after you paid your mortgage. Well, if you could make 500,000, way more than 10 times.
Well, a lot of landlords do think it's riskier though, Richie, don't they? They kind of instinctively, when you've got your house there, and some of this might be just old habits, you've got a house, you've owned it for years, it's invariably got tenants in there, they pay the rent, you've not had any moody ones for a long time, so everything's fine. It's very easy, and if you've got a few of those on the go, you can see why it feels like. But then, if you are looking at diversifying, I suppose there's a landlord instinct to just buy another house rather than what they would perceive as taking a risk. But you're saying it's not always a risk.
Do you know,
anything's a risk, but
it is a risk.
It's not always a greater risk.
Oh yeah, well, there's no doubt if you're going to try and do something that could make you 500,000 or 200,000, whatever, the risk is going to be greater than it is if you're trying to buy 3-bed, end terrace, put a nice family in it. Of course, it's going to be more risky. I think risk, though, has to be understood, and it's about knowledge. So when you know how, if I went out and drove a car this afternoon and I'd never driven, never had a driving license, it's fairly risky. But when I've got the knowledge and the education to do it, I've been guided by someone, it's less risky. And so knowledge and knowing how to manage risk is important. So I think, yes, it's more risky, but not if you actually know what you're doing. And I think the other thing in terms of that risk, when we're talking about trying to make a large lump of money, 20% profit, we have inherently built within that, we have risk capacity. So if the market drops, when was the last time the market dropped by 20%? Some years ago.
Sure.
But even if it did, and at worst you'd break even. But of course what you can do, if the resale market drops, the rental market's gone up, you can refinance and hold. So another thing that we always look at is 2, maybe 3 exits out of a development project, depending on what's going on. So it's about managing risk. It's definitely going to be more risky, but it's about managing that risk.
You talk about leverage in a broader sense, don't you? In the, it's not just not just about borrowing in that sense.
No, it's not. And I think that comes back to the 10x less part. Because the fundamental part of leverage, huge leverage on money. You could do a deal that could yield you a £200,000 profit and you've only put £12,000 investment and you get that money back. So there's a huge return on investment. It's infinite because you get your original investment back. But leverage in the wider sense is about leverage of time. Because for me, my experience of many people that I know are very high net worth individuals, the biggest problem they all have is time. Don't have enough time. And when we're talking about landlords or anyone diversifying and looking into development, done right, it's a highly leveraged business model. Because as a landlord, you don't have the capacity within the deal to bring in a professional team. Nor do you have to. As a developer, one, you have to actually deliver it because you can't be a quantity surveyor, a planning consultant, a structural engineer, a project manager. You haven't got time to learn all those skills. So you have to bring in a team. The funders require you to bring in a team. And of course, that is leveraged. And so the reality is all you're doing in the name of our company is being the CEO of the property company. And so all you're managing is the business. You're actually managing the project manager, and the project manager manages the contractor that manages the subcontractor and indeed can manage the professional team. So on that basis, many of my students are out there delivering a project that could yield a 6-figure profit, working less than 1 day a week. And I often think about it, when I talk about the 10x less and making this a reality, is I say a lot of people that are in jobs or running their own businesses or got their own portfolios are putting in a 60-hour week. That sort of order. Well, sometimes day a week. Sometimes minimum. We've all been there. And so on that basis, yes, you could earn 500,000, which is 10x more, but you could do it on average, because there's peaks and troughs, in 1 day a week. So it's 10x less. So it's thought-provoking, but it can be a reality.
There is, I suppose, again, it's that kind of, there's certainly long-term landlords who've rented out properties for years. There's a comfort zone there for some, and many will just remain in that position, and thank goodness that tier of the property industry, it still exists. But it's the mindset change, isn't it? That's really key, because the thought of taking a former hotel, a small hotel that you could turn into 10 flats, looks great, it's all completely doable, but then suddenly you've got to find, a plasterer, a plumber, all the various people. Your job has changed overnight. That's quite daunting for some landlords. What sort of, for those who are new to it, how would you address that kind of mindset change?
So it definitely is a mindset change, but it's nothing like in the way you've just described it there, because the reality is you're not looking for plasterers, you're not looking for plumbers. What we're actually looking for as a developer is a project manager. The project manager will in turn find the contractor, and the contractor will in turn find the subcontractors, plasterers, plumbers, and manage them. So this is leverage. I think the big thing, the mindset shift is running a business. And I think one of the problems, and I talk about it a lot, I actually say, do you know what I'll do? Is I'll train you how to run a business. It just happens to be a property development business. And many people out there, particularly many landlords, have fallen into it, as we often did. I never got trained how to run a business. I just run businesses. I worked out the way to do it. And this concept of getting into something where you're fairly hands-off, where you're relying on other people, you're delegating, you're putting systems and processes. That's what it's all about, which is a framework like any successful business is run. If you bought a franchise business, it's all mapped out. Property development, in the way I teach, is mapped out. It's just a system and a process. That is the mindset shift, that you can't do it all. In fact, some of my students don't even go to site. They don't need to. I've got students that are based overseas, whether it's in Europe or in the Middle East. Some of those are struggling at the moment, but they're hands-off doing developments in the UK, not going to site because they're managing the business. That is the mindset shift, to actually be the CEO and work at that level.
So that is doable. So that to many landlords, that question I put to you about, finding Mick the plumber and discovering he can't start till August, that's the sort of thing that stands in the way, isn't it? It's those kind of sort of fundamentals that landlords and others that are looking to get into this, that's almost the first thing they'd be considering.
They would definitely be thinking that, and the danger is as well, and I see this a lot, the mistake that people make is if they do go into it with that mindset, then they're too much hands-on. Now we talked about risk earlier. There's a lot of money at stake. When you're making a 200,000, 300,000 profit, well, that's quite good. That can change your life. But a 200,000 loss, that changes your life for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
And what I would say, this industry, like any other industry, doesn't suffer fools.
Yep.
And so property development, there's a lot of people in here who are risking a lot of money, and their livelihoods depend on it. And so if you come in inexperienced, but with no education, no support around you, so you actually get in and try and do a big conversion project, try and find the plasterers and plumbers yourselves, or I see a lot procuring some of their own materials. So a lot of landlords will come in and go, I can get kitchens cheaper. I'm going to procure kitchens.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you cut across the very basics of a JCT contract, which is a Joint Contracts Tribunal. It's a legal process that we use. And if your kitchen supplier is late, then the contractor's got a claim on you. And so people fall foul very quickly. And often walk away and go, that development didn't work. It was too, as we said earlier, risky. But the thing is, they didn't do it in the right way. So that's the danger. So that is that big mindset shift.
Fantastic. Just remind everyone, we'll put the details on the screen anyway, Ritchie. Website to go to for more information on what you guys do?
Well, PropertyCEO.co.uk. And of course, just look me up on LinkedIn or check us on YouTube. We're out there.
Fantastic. Ritchie, good to see you.
Thank you.